with liquid courage. We are
And
liquid.
We are liquid live.
We
are
shall
live.
pass. Oh my!
Musty Wargamers Season 4, Episode 15. Hello, everyone. Tonight, we've got our normal crew, and we also have Victor from Vic's Managers joining us again. Hello, Victor.
Hey.
Howdy ho, neighbor.
So how's everybody doing this evening? Looks like we already have 4 to 5 people in the house.
Oh, we do?
Yep,
All
starting
right.
to load.
Got
Cool.
Brad, Lord Draconin.
Yeah, I told Brad just moments ago and said, hey, we're going to be on. So
Good deal.
Nice.
And we got Dwayne from Plastic Crack Gaming.
what does the world need more of? More plastic crack.
I thought you were going to say something else. I don't know. We haven't gotten through our musty drinks yet.
As I'm coming from the semi-space station today.
So how's everybody doing today? Do you guys want to just do our normal? I don't know. Victor, since you're the guest tonight, usually, I'm not sure if you remember, but we typically just talk a little bit about either what we've been painting or gaming, just kind of a little bit of a mini sort of, this is what I'm up to this week. And then
Sure.
if you are joining us with a musty drink, you're welcome to show it, but it's not required. I saw you slip something on the screen there for a moment there.
All right, so I'll start it off. I got so my drink of choice for tonight is a Parada tequila, and it's aged 12 years, where typical tequila is usually about 4 or 5 years.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So it's got this nice caramel color to it, and
Nice.
it's actually very smooth, unlike normal tequila. You know,
Oh.
like you take a shot, you know, you feel it. This,
Yeah.
nice and smooth.
Oh, so yeah, normally my initial history with tequila is when you take shots, you have salt on one hand.
Right. Yeah, this is
lime.
almost like drinking a nice whiskey. It's actually really nice.
Yeah.
Oh,
I always
that's
feel like when I'm drinking tequila shots, I'm being assaulted.
cool. So yeah, I always found tequila hits me hard fast. But so Parada, I'll have to remember that. I never had that
Yeah.
before. Parada tequila.
I was going to bring the bottle upstairs, and then I forgot it.
No worries. Yeah, it's something to think about. I always like to try new things.
Yeah, it's like tequila and me do not like each other because it gives me an upset stomach.
Rooms
Yeah.
have a tendency to have a lot of broken stuff the next day.
Not that. It's just that I get ill.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, this stuff isn't, I mean, it's, you know, it's got a little bit of a kick to it. I can't remember what proof it is or anything like that, but it's not anything like drinking
Straight tequila shots.
straight. Yeah. It's not like that at all.
Do they
So,
dilute it down? Like, do you think
I
it's-
don't think
it's
so.
prepared in a way, or no? Okay.
I think it's just the aging process.
Okay.
I think that's what does it. It kind of takes that really hard edge off of it.
Yeah.
It's-
Yeah, most of the time, any type of barrel aging will mellow stuff out.
True. That's the same with Scotch, right?
Yep.
The I did notice, and like a lot of people, I am one, like, typically, like, if you're gonna get something really good and paid top dollar, then you want to drink it in such a way that you can appreciate it. Like, that's like typically the way I would always view things. And so I would never like take an really expensive rum and fill it with a glass of Coke, like, you know, or something like
Right.
that. You know, I would always, you know, at the very least, maybe just reduce it to 1-to-1, but nothing like, I would never, usually I always drink it neat if it was be that expensive. But tequila is the one thing that I always found I could tell the difference in a margarita between a 100% blue agave, like higher quality tequila, and a non. Like, for whatever reason, I could tell the difference, even in like a traditional margarita, like on the rocks. And I was always surprised at that, because that's like the only time I break that rule, I would say.
No, there is a big difference in the flavors, that's for sure. So
Yeah.
Yep.
you get more of a more raw flavor with the younger it is.
Yep. Definitely.
So I've seen a lot of stuff that you're doing on your channel, Victor. I don't know if there's anything you want to mention as far as stuff you're interested in with the gaming right now, or the painting and stuff.
Yeah. So let's see. What was it? Might have been 2 weeks ago. Actually got in a game with a friend of mine. We did in Her Majesty's Name. Can't speak yet.
The second edition you got, I know.
Yep, the second edition, and this will be the second time we actually ran through a game. The first one was obviously a very learning game for us, again, to remember how things work and the differences and all that kind of fun stuff. The second one went very smooth. Very little flipping back and forth for rules and things like that, other than we're like, oh, wait. The biggest thing I find kind of annoying is trying to remember like what the special abilities are. You know, like you give, you know, I'm sure you could do this. You do this in other games where you give, you know, the character some special ability, and you're like, okay, what the hell does that do again? And then you forget about it, right? And then you go, oh, 10 minutes later, I should have used that. So there was a little bit more flipping for that kind of stuff, but the
Right.
rules were actually very easy to pick up. So that was kind of nice. Haven't really painted any wargaming figures lately. Actually, I've been selling off more than I've been painting. So I've just kind of been paring stuff down. I've gotten to the point where I'm looking at it going, I'm never going to use everything that I have. So I'm just kind of like, okay, it's, you know, if I want to buy stuff for the more niche things I want to do, then I got to sell off some of the other things to make some money to buy that, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And then also hobby-wise, still working on my Three Musketeer diorama, the 75 millimeter figures for that. I still have to fix the one figure whose hand broke, so I haven't done that yet. And been building a lot of car models lately, and that's actually been a lot of fun. It's very different, but I'm finding out now, because I'm doing that, I'm getting better at using my airbrush. It has forced me to really learn how to use my airbrush, which I'm hoping I can turn into using it for the larger figures that I'm painting.
Yeah, yeah.
So been doing that. And then
I noticed with the amount of purchases over time that you've been doing with cars and the amount of projects that you must be really getting into it. And in a lot of ways, even your channel is like grown to not just be like tabletop wargaming as focused, but like also lots of scale modeling stuff.
Yeah, I think I kind of started out the channel with just the wargaming, things like that. And it was a good place to start. It was a good place to learn and do all those things. But I didn't want to limit myself either with just doing that. I'm going to put up those things that interest me and I'm having fun with. So, you know, if people follow along, great. You know, the channel is for me. The channel keeps me motivated to keep things going. And yeah, that's kind of why I've been doing it. And doing the cars has actually been a nice improvement for my overall skills.
Yeah.
You know, much different than, putting 15 millimeter tanks together and stuff like that. And even doing the 1/35th scale models has improved my wargaming modeling, right? So overall it's been beneficial, I think, in that sense. Hey guys.
Hello to Eric, who's in the house. Says hello to everybody.
He's waving.
And we actually have a lot to talk about tonight with scale modeling. So you've already kind of got it started. So we'll kind of touch more on that later. People may notice on the show is we always try at least one topic to kind of do something that seems to fit the person's channel that's a guest, or like whether they have a YouTube channel or not, just like their interest in things. And so the scale modeling topic we have tonight definitely, and its similarities to hobbying for wargaming will be a good one. How about you, Rusty? What's going on with you with your I've seen your videos and stuff, but for folks that anybody that might not have or anything, like what have you been up to as far as gaming and hobbying and stuff?
Well, we been playing the Battle Valor fantasy game rule set the last few times, trying to get a hang of that and trying not to pull what little hair we have left in our head out as we're dealing with it. It seems to be a pretty decent set of rules, but the organizational part of it, and it's just like one of those things where you're going through it and you go, man, I wish somebody would have sent this to an editor or something to make this a lot better, because you're constantly flipping through. I was like, all right, what does this mean? And you flip page by page by page trying to find it, and it's a little blurb. It's like, okay, that would have been nice to have that as a set, but so it has been a lot of hair pulling when it comes to that. So we may.
So is your initial kick at the cat with this one, like, would you actually say was it called it's not called Arcanum, is it? I'm sorry, the one that you just played prior to that.
Armies of Arcana.
Armies of Arcana. Would you say that you kind of enjoyed that one initially a little better than this one at first, or?
Yeah, I'd say so.
Okay, it's good to know, just in case somebody wants to pick one of those up.
Yeah, if I had a choice, is like the Armies of Arcana right now seems to be pulling us to. For me, it's like I'd rather go back to it. It seems like the Armies of Arcana has a little bit more chewiness to it that makes it work better.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like the armies have flavor with the Armies of Arcana versus, it's like all the armies seem to operate the same in Battle Valor, but with just some racial profiles that give you a slight difference. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, it's like you're playing the same army. Everybody's playing the same army.
Okay, yeah. That can be good and bad. And sometimes people like games where it's not too, it's fairly uniform between sides as far as like the challenge against each other, but then it takes the flavor away a little bit as far as the different kinds of armies.
Yeah, that's the kind of how I feel about it. Is like, I like armies where you actually play it and you have something that gives you an idea. It's like, it's totally different from the other opponent you're playing. So you have to learn your army better and make it work better type of deal.
Yeah.
Instead of it's the other one, it's like Battle Valor seems more of a generic system that works rudimentary for everybody across the board, just with some minor tweaks here and there. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I figure it'll take us another couple more games. I think we're playing again this weekend here at my house. So,
cool. So, do you think you can tweak the game to give it a little bit more flavor the way you want it to?
Maybe. We haven't added all the rules in, so that might change the flow a little bit, but it's hard to say. Mm-hmm. Until we actually add everything to it. So there might be some slight differences, but overall, it takes a while when you're playing something to give yourself a good idea what you're looking at. Mm-hmm. So that's what I've been doing for that. For game wise, miniature wise, I have a few things I've been working on. You can see I have a whole bunch there's 24 war bears here. Mm-hmm. So I got these little guys. I put them in the video the other day, but in case somebody's not subscribed to me that watch you, so little 15 mil war bears, dwarven war bears riders.
Yeah, a lot of them.
Yeah, this is half of them. I still got another. This is one unit. This is the Red Riders, the first dwarven bear division, and I got another one just like it. It's going to be. I have to work on that one. So one unit's in red, and the other one's going to be in blue. And this is for Dwayne. This is the Mackie.
I remember you put a picture up on there, I think, right on the Facebook page, maybe?
Yeah, this went up on, this was on Facebook. This is going to be going out in a video in a week or two from now. So that's the very first battle mech ever made in BattleTech. So this is it right here.
Oh, wow.
I finally got around and got one. They didn't make this thing until like 2000, 2005 or something like that, I think it was. So it's a fairly recent one, and I just never decided to ever get one. But I finally got it.
Mm-hmm. So it's the very first one in the rules, but they just never made a miniature for it, or what?
It's fluff-wise, it's the very first battle mech.
Oh, I see. And then they kind of reconned it.
Yeah,
retconned it.
Yeah, and they finally made it. And then I got this.
Gosh, nice.
This is the very first time he is done.
You got the purple on him.
Yep, he's all done.
Nice work.
Nice old school miniature.
Yeah. You can see, bring up a standard size guy next to him. So,
yeah.
What the hell is that supposed to be?
This is Nagash, the necromancer lord, the father of necromancers. He's the very first necromancer
within the Warhammer fantasy
universe.
Very cool.
So,
well done.
Got him. So I'll be putting a video out on him, but this will take care of my very first thing that's done with the painting challenge.
Yep.
That I had planned on doing. It helped that I spent last 2 days probably 15 hours working on it. So I got about 15 hours of working on it in the last 2 days. So it helps.
Yeah.
Pushes it along pretty quickly. It was like when you get into something, it's like you get started on a project and you just like, ooh, got this, and it's like, I've been kind of holding off on painting a little bit, and all of a sudden, you know how you get when you haven't done something for a while, and all of a sudden you just want to start cranking on something. And that's
absolutely.
Yep.
I've been kind of like that recently. I actually had a little bit of a painting fun, but you got doers. All right.
We got a little bit of doers tonight. We're gonna do the doers.
Classic.
Yeah. A little bit of smoke in here, a little bit of peatiness. Nice little. And this is because we started talking about BattleTech. We have to have a drink.
I'm gonna have to catch up because I haven't gone yet. I haven't even opened the bottle of what I'm going to show tonight that I'm doing, so I'll have to.
Ow, that hurt.
I do a couple of ad lib ones usually anyway. People usually catch me sneaking one here and there.
On Tuesday, I went back to the dentist because a week ago, I went in and they started working on my crown, and they carved it down, and gave me a temporary put on it, and it's like it's been sensitive to cold and everything, and I just realized I'm sensitive to alcohol.
Well,
and
so
they
the bacteria in there.
Well, it'll take care of the bacteria, but
yeah,
the
cowboy mouthwash.
Yeah, there you go. So on Tuesday I go in to get my new crown put on because they sent it off, had it made, and they bring it back, and it's like, oh, let's try it out. They put it on there, and it's like, oh, it fit. And how does it feel? I was like, perfect. All right. And then they check the X-ray, and they look like, oh, there's a void in it. The thing they made had a void in it. It's like, this could crack, so we need to go back and make a new one for you. So it's like, okay, and the dentist grabs his stuff, the foam stuff, to put on your mouth to make the new mold, and he just open up your mouth and he goes and puts this cold stuff right on the raw open ground down too, and all I see was stars. I see stars.
I've had that happen.
And I about decked the dentist.
Yeah.
And he was like, I grabbed the hold, and it's like, and he's like, ah, and he's like, oh, you want me to shoot you up with it? It's like,
At least let me know it's coming.
Yeah.
Something.
So gosh. I just realized that this little temporary is not fully covering the tooth.
Not good.
This is the first alcohol I've had in 2 weeks.
You just have to drink on the other side of your mouth. That's all.
Yeah, that's going to happen. So,
Well,
we'll make it happen.
I showed on the Musty page what I've been working on. I'll just switch my angle here. What do I do? It seems like every time I do this, it's like for the first time. Let's see here.
Yeah, it's like I tried to hook up my snowball and my webcam to this computer, and nothing will work.
So I've just decided to start, and just since I'm doing like a chariot project, and I still have, like, I guess I have one banner barrier that won't be on the chariot, but then the rest are all in the chariots. I just decided I'll just start painting and get the chariots done completely, and then I'll just work it on as a figure project, and then just put them in. And that's kind of the way I'll attack it. I've never done chariots before. And so, and particularly, I mean, I've done them in 15 mil, so totally different situation for DBA, but I've never done like large chariots like these. And so I never, I didn't really think I would do them, like build them completely and then try to paint the figures inside them. Didn't seem like the right way to do it. And so, so yeah, I'm just working on this. I couldn't believe how much I had to paint in between and under stuff with the way I decided to do this. But yeah, you know, I just got finished doing all the rope on all of them. I've got a bit of a red color, and then I'm going to brighten up a little bit with the second coat. And then I'll, you know, paint all the bone, and I've got the metallics on there. And then I'll do more detail on the, I guess they're Tuscagores. It's just brown right now, but I'll you know, bring out their fur and like work on all the details on them. So I'm going to get these all painted up, then do some nice goblin green. I actually decided, I don't normally do this. I'm sure, I don't know how often you guys do this, but I went real traditional on the base. I actually basically just coated the thing in glue and sand. And then I'm doing goblin green, and I'm going to dry brush yellow over it, kind of like the old days, like, you know, old school green base, you know, like for like old school old hammer. And so that's what I'm going to do for that. And then I'll work on the guys afterwards. And so I'm kind of happy that I'm a little bit past the black primer stage on these chariots here. I'm kind of getting into being able to do some washes and highlighting and stuff pretty soon in details. But I think I will. These aren't painted yet, but I think I'm going to do the horns and tusks black, but then the teeth kind of white ivory. I'm not just going to do it all as kind of bone. I'm going to make them shiny, like put some gloss on them and stuff, and do it a little different than I see some of them. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with these. And hopefully as I get a little further on with these, I'll be have a good stint into the Musty project. I'm not going to be past the starting stage. Click back here on my camera. I apologize if you can hear my printer tonight, but it always seems to go longer than I thought it would. But I've been running my printer a lot lately, and I finished kind of like a medieval home for burrows and badgers, but I could also use it for Warhammer Fantasy. And I finished that one that I showed on my channel, but now I'm working on a tree house that's sort of like for burrows and badgers, where like mice or ferrets or whatever could live, squirrels. And it's kind of like a pretty cool multi-layered house with roots that go up through it and everything. And it's really printing out pretty nicely. It's the same company. So that's going right now. I'm on the second main floor of that. And so I've been doing a lot of 3D printing and enjoying that, really getting back into my old printer. So I just always learning new stuff with it, getting replacement parts and like doing all kinds of different things with that. Oh, let me click out of this here. There we go. And so as far as the Musty drink tonight, this is Buna Bane, I think is what it is. I don't know, actually, if you guys can pronounce that better than me. Buna Try to. Oh, I guess it doesn't want to go to solo layout this time. That's kind of weird. Yeah, I don't know if you can see that, but Buna Haben. Buna Haben.
Buna.
And so
Buna Haben.
I got this. Yeah, I got this as a gift and I hadn't opened it. my computer's real slow. It's like now it's jumping. I didn't even ask it to get a single frame, but that's kind of scary. My computer's obviously not doing too well. But I thought I would open this up for the show just because I had something to open. And there we go. So it is...
You're going to have to give us a tasting notes.
Nice little color there. I'll catch up on... it says that it's got dried fruit as its aroma of dried fruits. Actually, this one's pretty nice. You know, as I've opened up a lot of them on the show where I said, you know what, not really my favorite, but I'll drink it, you know, no problem. But this one's actually pretty nice. Actually is, I'd actually say that it's got a very oak kind of taste for me. Like that's the way I would describe it. And I kind of like that. Yeah, it's got a nice wood. I don't know if it's from the casks that they aged it in maybe, but it's a 12-year. But it definitely has
aged in bourbon cask, so it might have a slight oaky vanilla flavor scent.
Actually, if I read the whole label, it also says toasted nuts with vanilla and delicate coastal influence, because it is an Islay. Islay. Yeah. So
yeah, you probably have a little bit of raisin, dark cherry aspect with vanilla and that, with maybe a slight saltiness.
So what made you pick that one up? Anybody recommend it to you?
That was a gift. And a lot of times I get them as gifts occasionally from within an extended family or whatever, but it just takes me a while to get to them. I have, for me as like a Scotch drinker, I don't have a huge collection because I do tend to drink it, but I have like certain ones that are my repeat buys. And then if I'm drinking something new, it's usually because it's a gift. And if I really like it, then I'll get it later. But
nice.
Yeah. So that's I have hopefully in the near future going to start gaming again. Like I'm hoping that the local stores where I live are going to be opening at one point, but I have to look into the ability to have a bubble or something like that. And I'm hoping to do a little bit of short practice soon, Warhammer Fantasy and things like that. And so I have a feeling I got, as we were talking about, I got my COVID shot, thankfully, my first one. And I probably won't get the next one, unfortunately, just through the situation in Canada for probably 4 months. It's a situation where the second one comes here just due to availability. But I feel better about having gotten the first one.
Yeah. It's a start down the road.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'm fully vaccinated. Yay.
Yeah, it's a good thing. So why don't we hit the comments real quick before we start the first topic?
All righty.
So after we had some introductions in the beginning, we've got Eric says, nice, Vic's in the house. And we've got, I think Dwayne says, throw a curveball at him, referring to get future guests rather than always make it something that they are familiar with. Dwayne's talking about the paint scheme. I think that was during Rusty's stuff there and how Hugh also went to the dentist. Dwayne says, those Beastmen chariots are amazing. Used to love Chaos back in the day. You could have a mix of Beastmen, Demons, and Mortals all in one army, and then they split them up. And that's true. Like I would... I actually have, because I love the old Hammer and I love the old like Warhammer stuff. I already have Orcs and Goblins, which you'll probably be interested in, Dwayne. Like I have a nice painting project where I've already started Orcs and Goblins, but mostly Goblins, and I have lots to do for that. And it's a bit more of a 6th and 7th edition kind of army, like a bit more recent, but it's still 6th edition, not quite old Hammer. But then I also have like a old High Elf army to paint. And so I thought about that, like about doing Mortals too, like with my Chaos, and I probably will expand on it at one point, but most likely my main thing is once I mostly get where I want to with my Beastmen, I'm going to probably move to either some more dabbling and adding to my Orcs and Goblins or just hardcore working on some of my high elves, painting the way I want. Now, with the high elves, and I haven't really done like a big video on this, but I really made it a point to try to collect it the way that I really wanted to. And like, you don't have to do that to game at all, but I just kind of wanted sort of like a lot of the models from the earlier editions and to have a certain look, like from a collectible perspective. And so I spent a lot of time on that, and I want to try to match the painting to that. So that'll be an interesting project in the future. But that was a long response to a comment.
Back in the day, you could get the Chaos book, and you'd had all the demons and the Chaos Warriors and Beastmen are all in the same book.
For 6th edition, I do have all of them for Chaos. Like I bought all of them for that edition just to be able to play should I want to. Brad says that Mackie looks great and nice looking chariots. And people were wondering what the whistling was, and Brad says I can hear the printer. I wish I could. I have to figure it out. I probably can turn my microphone down in the future so it isn't so. Hopefully it's not too loud. Dwayne says itching to get a game of BattleTech in person again soon. Just waiting for lockdown to ease here. And then Eric says, "Okay, guys, need painting advice for what I'm painting at the moment. Thoughts on putting face paint on 15 millimeter Cold War US guys? I think it is correct, but the painting." So are you asking, Eric, kind of like how best to do it?
Oh yeah, back in the day we used to paint our face with the
black
camouflage, black, green colors, so it blend in. We even had winter camouflage too, you could put on your face. And do you want to put that'd be easy. It's like you put the base color of flesh tone, and then if you get a little rambunctious with the greens, with the OD green with your uniform, and it splatters onto the face, all good.
Yeah, I certainly think it would look good. I mean, I would try it. Why not?
I think the hard thing, maybe what you might be referring to, if I heard from you guys that you think green and black and like some various colors might be good, the hard is 15 mil can be hard at times on that size of head, depending on how big it is. But what I like with my Ariadne, which are 28 mil, and it's not historical, Eric, but it's fantasy, but they're meant to be modern sort of camo types. I like to experiment a little bit with the black of, and also my Native Americans that I paint up, Iroquois.
Yeah.
I like to put either like a little bit of gloss, like keep the rest of the model matte, but a little bit of gloss in certain spots on the black, like just to make it a little shinier. I like that technique. Or some people will mess around with the gray and blues. Blues can be really nice to work with black to kind of create a different kind of highlights and things too. Because I immediately go to gray with black, but I like to recently to mess around with blue as a change. But let's see. The other thing I'd recommend, and this is the obvious, is if you're planning on doing 15 mil painting faces, because I paint eyes on stuff, even eyes on 28s is really small. That's the only way I'd be able to do it. You probably know that. Dwayne says, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I certainly think that painting the camo on the face like that is, I wonder if you can do it. You put the flesh tones down, like Rusty said, and do all that kind of stuff. But then, if you vary those colors, like a streak of black, a streak of OD, and maybe a little bit of khaki or something in there just to break all that up. Mm-hmm. I think that would look really good. The only thing that I might worry about is whether or not it would end up really hiding the detail of the face. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like I know you're trying to make it look like it's camo, right? And you're trying to hide everything, but at what detail level do you want it to get to, I guess? But I would certainly try it.
I would try a few, go with like tiger stripes, going across the face, just go that route. Go with a black, then a green, or light green, darker green type of thing, just to see how it will work out on a few of them.
Yeah.
Without
I
seeing,
imagine most of the players that play the this would be for Team Yankees, the most common one nowadays. That how many of the people playing Team Yankee even knew that we camoed our faces? They probably have no clue. They just paint it, like they would do the flesh tones and everything, and go that route. And we would, and obviously soldiers are like, oh, I got to put the camo on their face, because you don't go in the field without camo on your face.
The other thing I would say to Victor and Rusty's points, if you're looking at mixing up the colors on the face, is if you have the magnifying glass and you feel comfortable kind of getting into the detail there, maybe try other things instead of a brush. If it's that small, without having seen the 15mm model, you might be able to use, like, this is a toothpick, and the type of toothpick I have in front of me doesn't go to a perfect point, but it goes to a flat head on the top of the toothpick. The edge on the very top of the flat head, if you don't goop the paint on, but you just get it enough on there that it'll just go on from the edge of the flat head, and you just run it along while you have your magnifying glass in different spots, you might be able to get enough control to show a little bit of fine detail with that camouflage rather than a brush. And so there's techniques like that I could recommend. But I think with that, you have to be able to see, I don't know if it's because I feel like the moment I started to use magnifiers, my eyes got worse. And I think it's psychological that now, because I know I can see so much better when I use this, I don't even attempt to do some of the stuff I used to attempt to do without it, because I feel like I can't see anymore.
Sharpies.
Sharpies. They make the different color Sharpies. You could go out and get the fine tip ones. You can get a dark green, lighter green, and a black, and that might be the quickest way to do it.
Yep.
So it works. I've used it before. I was trying to dig through my drawer here. It's find my actual. I got an actual Sharpie set, that has a multiple colors of, I can use, which I do for doing a lot of that stuff. And it makes it a lot easier.
It says, yeah, camo paint always made my Joes wear it. I'm having issues painting. Lots of lasso magnifier would help. And good advice. I think the flesh base is the trick. Trying the simple green and black highlights and a toothpick. Thanks, guys. Excellent.
Yep.
All right. So, let's see here. Maybe find matte pens. Good suggestion, Rusty.
Yep.
So as far as first topic of the evening, I think we're going to do a little bit as our main topic tonight, and hopefully we don't forward our next secondary topic to the next show again. But I think our main topic tonight is going to be, we can kind of run with this how we like, but I think the idea is how much and what ways do we find hobby techniques from the scale modeling hobby, which if you really kind of debate it, really miniature wargaming works in scales, and you could almost count that we have a scale model hobby aspect to our hobby, but it is a different hobby, it's a different set of people with doing at times. There are two groups, and although there's a lot of crossover, there are different separate groups. And so how do we, which this channel is mainly about wargaming, how do we benefit from using techniques from the scale model hobby, both from a technical level, maybe from just different aspects to it. Now, scale model hobby, people can correct me, because I don't consider myself like a hardcore scale model hobbyist, but we can look at things like, kits for planes and cars and stuff like that. But we can also almost look at it to a little bit like the model railroading has an influence, as well as I even think of the diorama hobby as a part of an aspect of the scale model hobby. So there's a lot of different aspects to it, and we can think about that when we answer. So I don't know if you want to give your first crack at this, Victor? By the way, Victor, I noticed that you go by Victor and Vic. Do you prefer one over the other? I don't think I ever asked you that.
No, I don't.
Okay, you're good with both.
Reference, yeah.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, because I keep calling you Victor, but then you change your channel to Vic's Miniatures and you put Vic in this, and I'm like, sometimes people have a preference.
You know what? I didn't even put that in there when I logged in. That was there. I was like,
okay.
It knew me. It knew
Siri, Alexa.
Yeah, as for like crossover stuff, I can remember when I was kind of really starting to get into the wargaming hobby, and I was learning how to paint. When I started to paint terrain, so buildings and, trying to build, like mountains or hills and things like that, I started looking at model railroaders because they do it so well. And the stuff looks realistic, and I wanted things to look good when I put it on the table. So I looked at that stuff, and I actually bought several DVDs on how to build model railroad terrain, and I took those ideas and the techniques that they were using and applied it to 15 millimeter buildings or 28 millimeter buildings. And the techniques are definitely usable. They're dry brushing. They're using like tea leaves for ground effects. They're using Sharpies to blackline things, to shade, and it's all stuff that definitely works for the gaming community. Even hold on one second. Let me see. Do I have? Yeah, this will work. So, I put up a video. Is that today? No, yesterday. I was practicing with some Tamiya paint and practicing a sponging technique, right? Just like, you see the faux decors of, people in their houses, will use something called rag rolling, right? So you take a rag, you dip it in the paint, and then you roll it across your wall, and it gives a nice texture to the wall and things like that. You can do a sponging technique on your walls in your house. So I tried to do the same thing using that for, let's see if I can get this in the shot here. I was thinking about it for my model cars, but there's no reason why, if you perfect this, let's see if it'll actually focus a little bit here. If you perfect this a little bit, get the colors the way you want it, you could do a whole marble floor for a temple like this, right?
Yep.
And it's all the same basic techniques. There's nothing that we're learning to do here that you can't apply to anything that you're doing hobby-wise, as far as I'm concerned. There's, how many people are using acrylics and oils to paint their figures, or to paint their tanks now. All the weathering techniques that are coming out from like AK Interactive and all those things, all came from model railroading, and at times doing in some cases like I said, the faux decor in houses and things like that. So certainly, it's a great learning experience, and definitely everybody should, experiment. And that's, I know, I think it was you, Palmer, who had said, hey, I thought you were going to be playing the spoons on your last video. But, just practicing, I've done 3 videos where I've just been painting spoons just to try the techniques, and some of them are a little off, but that happens. But I think some of them, some of the things are turning out really well, and I'm gonna apply that to something.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I mean, like experimentation, if you don't experiment in order to get a finished product that you like. I mean, you experiment in order to see like how things are going to turn out that you've never done before. And I really like that yellow one because I find that when you use something like the sponge, and depending on what you're trying to do with it, sometimes you might have enough of a contrast that the sponging takes on more of an importance than, let's say, the color, like, and what your eye sees and the detail of the sponging. And you may not want that detail of sponging, but I found that yellow one, I didn't really see the detail of the sponging, but I saw this, like, it looked like an antiquated tablecloth to me. Like, it looked like something like that I would see, either in like somebody from 2 generations back, that in my family, like on the table, or something in a museum. Like, it just looked very cool, like like that yellow with the white underneath it that you did with the sponging. I just thought that came out really nice, but you really can't know that it's going to look that way unless you try.
Right. I actually got an idea from somebody else's channel, and for the life of me right now, I can't remember which one it is, and I apologize in case that person's watching. They had done this lowrider Cadillac, and it had they had done all these swirls in the paint, so these oranges and reds and yellows, and then they went back over it with a candy red over the top of it, and it also this pearlescent paint within that. It was just absolutely gorgeous. I went, I got to figure out how to do that. And they just kind of talked about what they did.
Yeah, ghost effects.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, I got to figure out how to do that. So I started to play, and, with that has been, the things that I've been coming up with, and I'm going, okay, well, let's try this. So let's see what happens here. The next thing I was going to try was to take a piece of burlap or cheesecloth or something and paint a model, put some really heavy wet paint on it, slap that burlap or cheesecloth over that, and then pull it off and see what's left. And then glaze over that just to see what comes out of it, just to see how that, you're going to have several layers in there just to see how that works.
Yeah, I've seen where they got like a stencil system where you can lay it across the model, and it's like your flames, and you do a dusting of one color, and then you move the flame, and you do another dusting of the color, and move the flame, another dusting of color, and you get that layered effect. Then they go back over it again. Let's say you got your cars done in like a light color, then you go back over it with a darker, and it gives you that nice ghosting effect. That's pretty common when you see it. If you ever go to car shows, it's pretty common seeing that kind of stuff done on vehicles.
It kind of reminds me when if you ever watch shows about cars or motorcycles where they will restore or build something, that when they actually lay down color, like with the airbrush, the large airbrushes, and they kind of create candy coats and like really smooth colors. When I watch Victor's channel and I see what he's doing with his cars, it reminds me of that, right? Like it reminds, like, usually when I'm seeing tanks and 40K and like stuff like that, I'm not usually seeing people trying to make like a cherry red Corvette with like a really nice metallic and candy coat on the top, glaze. Like it's just different, right? It's like it's a different kind of process a bit. Not to say you can't use that, like, in doing sci-fi vehicles and stuff, but it just gives you a different feeling, like of what you're trying to accomplish.
So I got this the other day, and I gotta actually try it out. It's a splatter template. So I'll take one of these out so you can actually see it. So it's kind of like photo etch.
Yeah.
Sorry if the glare is a little bit bad. I'm sorry, guys.
No, we can see it's like basically perforated.
Yeah. So, going back to what Rusty was talking about, you could take this and hold it over whatever you're painting, right? And you could do camouflage this way. You could do, the the spatter effect on a car.
Mhm.
You do this with with an airplane. You could do this in a 15 millimeter tank.
Yep.
And on the front of that package, it said 15 mil. Is that right? Or did it say that, or am I wrong?
No, it didn't. It just
Okay.
says airbrush. It just says airbrush stencils on it.
Okay, so I was just wondering whether they make them in different size
I
splatter
have
and
seen
stuff.
them.
Yeah.
I have seen them larger. I have seen some things that are smaller than this.
Mhm.
So I don't know if they're scale specific. Just
Yeah.
that's the
You just
size.
eye it. Yeah, you eye it and see what's going to work for you.
Mhm.
Yeah, I've seen
So,
all kinds of stencils like that where you can have the digital camo stencils for modern kits. So if you want to put digital camo on something, and just it makes it a lot easier than hand painting it or using a pen to put it on.
Yeah, I don't know. You truly have to have patience to do that by hand. The digital camo.
Yeah. So Rusty, that's Victor's first kick at the discussion. We're going to come back after the comments and expand. Rusty, what are your thoughts on, in your experience or your opinions on the same topic?
I watch a lot of different model builders on my channel. I've mentioned this before. You can learn a lot of different techniques for working on vehicles, for actually weathering them, and bringing all the nice little doodads that you can learn from those other channels, and it propagates over really easy. And I was just like, almost everything I have is like, here's some black soot that I use for, I want it kind of bright there, but it's a very container. It's just charcoal colored stuff in here.
Mhm.
And then I got some other different colors. There's like a tan, and then this is like a rust color. And you can basically just brush it on where you want it to go, and you can give yourself a dusted look, like it's a vehicle going through the field, like it's red clay. You can give yourself that red clay or dusty light clay, or like it's been going down a gravel road or something like that. And then you have where the exhaust ports are coming off, like especially if it's a diesel, you're always going to have a lot of dirty diesel exhaust coming out, and you'll have that buildup of dark stuff, and that's what the dark powders are for the black, for putting on models. And I even use them on my 15s. So if you ever look at my 15 mil models that they always look like they're weathered, that's because I weather all of them. And being a former tanker or running around in APCs myself in the Army, and Eric can testify to that, where first thing you ever do when you come out of the field is hit the wash rack, because everything is just covered in mud and dirt and dust, and you got to hose all that stuff down. So the moment something leaves the cantonment, it's not going to look pristine. You always see everybody has these nice little pristine models that they're playing with, and I was like, oh, it's got to be muddy. It's got to be dirty. And be it a 15 mil model or even a 1/35th scale model you're working on, is always going to be grimy, dirty mess. If it's a combat vehicle. Now, like Vic, you're working on these nice, cool cars and stuff. You want those pristine, because those are, unless it's going to be a rat rig or something, and
Right.
if it's a rat rig, then you want it dirty looking. But
you saw the rust bucket I built, right?
Yeah.
Sam.
Yeah.
You saw that, and that was me just going, okay, let's make this thing horrible.
Yeah.
Right. I actually have a second piece that I haven't actually built the model yet, but it's going to be the before and after. So, I had talked about trying to make it look like a diorama.
Mm-hmm.
Where the car was, they found it, they bought it for, a couple $100 or whatever, right? And then the rust bucket, and then what they turned it into. when they get done working on it. So I thought that would be a nice contrast between those two.
Yeah.
And it'll be nice and pristine and everything. But, you know, even if you're painting cars, you know, I don't know, maybe it's the realist in me. Like when I paint my Wargame figures, I don't paint them like they have brand new uniforms. I paint them like they've been in the field for 8 months. You know, this just, to me, is the way they should look. Not like they just walked off a parade route or something, you know.
Yeah.
And I do take some of them, you know, depending on what I'm trying to affect I'm going for, but like the car models or even tank models and things like that, you know, I like them to be a little worn. You know, like somebody's been driving it, unless, you know, like I said, if it's something specific, I want that, you know, I want this car to be pristine, and that's the way it'll look. But yeah, I like a little dirt, I like a little grime, and all that kind of stuff.
A lot of my stuff I do too. For whatever reason, with my French Indian War stuff, when I have my British and French, because the uniforms are so sort of ornate compared to the stuff I do, I tend to paint them a little bit more like I see in the plates, like they're kind of coming out ceremonial. But and I like it. I just personally like it. But I totally understand what you're saying. Like my World War II and like a lot of most of my stuff, I will weather and like and paint as if they're kind of a bit more realistic.
All it takes is just hitting the ground once and rolling around a little bit. You're going to be all grimy. So,
yep.
And myself, it's like the number of times I've low crawled through the grass or something of that nature, or even climbing around on a vehicle, you get grimy pretty quickly. You're going to
That's just outside of everyday stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
Change your oil once, you're going to be all messy looking. So.
Chris has joined us in the house. Chris from Walkabout Games.
Hey, Chris.
Looks best when stuff has been in combat. Yep.
Yeah. So, you know, I don't know, like, I don't consider myself a scale modeler. I do have a question for you guys before the end of the show, because I'm thinking about doing a piece, and I do have one in front of me that I'll talk about in a second. But I find that whenever you have within the hobbies, sort of main areas where you have a little bit of crossover and people are borrowing, like you guys both said, like using powders and oil washes and like things that people might use on one side a bit more, but then seeing it creep into the other avenues of scale modeling, like within wargaming and stuff. Sometimes there's little things that if you don't belong on that side, like if you don't go to, let's say, railroading forums and like all that stuff, and if you don't go to scale modeling forums, there's certain products I've found that I really don't hear about almost ever, unless it's a really freak thing that I just sort of happen to see a project that somebody's doing, and I'm like, what is that thing you're using, you know? And one of them for me, and I've only used it once so far, but I think it's a really cool product. I don't know if you guys have ever used it, but it's Mr. Surfacer. You guys ever use this?
Yes.
Okay. So this stuff, which is I had to get from Japan, I really wasn't able to get anywhere else, and it comes in different grades. This is 500, but I believe it comes in 1,000, and it may come in a 1,500. I think the one I have is the most coarse one of them. And the reason I have this was for this model that I still haven't gotten to yet, but it's a sci-fi model, but it's a Mech model. So it's basically Japanese. This is actually kind of like a line of, it's basically a little bit of a World War II science fiction sort of world, where it's even like the characters that are in here, when they show the pilots of vehicles and things, they look like they're from World War II, but it's like almost like a alternate universe, like a fusion of the two. And so I really like this. And Mr. BM Builder, the Brisbane model builder, who sometimes comes on our show and chats with us here, he's done a lot of really cool, that's how I found out about his channel, Mac stuff. But I was getting this for that, to use this to look like cast iron, like, you know, like an iron that has like those imperfections in it. And because I never built this yet, I'd never used this, but I used it recently to make that iron pipe that comes out of the pond and that little diorama thing, wargaming piece I did recently. And I used this to make it look like a really gritty, realistic iron pipe, like coming out of it. And I love this stuff. Like, this stuff is great. And I never like. And do you know the YouTube channel Dread? Like, do you guys? I'm not sure if you guys know who I'm talking about, Dread, but he basically out of the UK does a lot of scale modeling and wargaming stuff. And I just saw him doing a Mac model like this, and that's how I saw this. But this is really common in the scale model hobby. Like, you know, like a lot of people know about this, but in the wargaming hobby, I don't think many people like all over the place know about it. I think it's actually fairly, from what I could see, just kind of like
if you're going to make a modern battle tank like an M1, you would have that on the top deck of it, because that you got basically a rough surface like that's on top for you got a grip. So if it gets wet or you got muddy surface, you're not going to slip and smash your skull in.
And even if you see, I don't know the name of the forging. I don't know enough about forging steel and like forging metal parts in large vehicles and things. But if you look at old stuff made of certain kinds of metal, like instead of it being perfectly smooth, like a lot of times it'll have a rough kind of texture to it, even when it's new, you know, like in the way it's been made. And that's what I found this kind of makes. And so the other thing when Victor was talking, I actually unplugged my headset so I could listen to what he was saying, but I was looking for something else, but my room is a catastrophe right now. I couldn't find it. But it's just same thing when I was working on the Twilight stuff. I think it was for that. For the side of the building, I know of things as a wargamer. I know of things as a wargamer that actually will give you a rough stucco texture on houses. But I saw somebody using Chinchilla Dust, and I never even heard of Chinchilla Dust. Like, and I didn't realize like it's the stuff you use to clean a chinchilla. Like if you have a chinchilla, but it's a pet product, and it's this really, really fine powder. And people use it to create a texture within wargaming. And like I've used sand and different grades of sand and things like that, but I'd never used this stuff. And I like the results they got. So I bought like a thing of Chinchilla Dust through Amazon. And I'll tell you, when you mix it in with the paint, it does have a pretty amazing way of mixing into raw paint and creating a really nice texture. And I'd never heard of it before in the wargaming hobby at all. But then when looking it up online on the scale model hobby, I've seen many things come up where people have used it. And so I don't know if you guys had any experience with that.
I haven't used that. I've seen it, but I haven't used it. Sawdust does the same thing. You know, I had made, there might be, no, it might be on my blog that I did that. Anyway, I had made this 4x8 terrain mat that was rollable, but I used silicon, paint, and sawdust, and I mixed the three things together, and I smeared that essentially over a painter's canvas, and then added flocking and other color and all that kind of stuff to that, and I gave it a really nice texture. And then with the silicon, made it flexible so I could roll it up and store it. Stuff that I took from doing theater, because when we were building sets, you'd use sawdust and the paint to create texture for the walls, and things like that. And the silicon, I got from somebody else's site, so it's just a matter of playing, right?
Yeah.
Figuring out what works.
Yeah.
You see something and you go, I wonder if I could use this, or see somebody using it and you go, I've never thought about that. So, and
I tend to try, or at least when I was starting out, because I didn't have a whole lot of money when I was doing, when I was getting into this, I tried to find something that was inexpensive. It's like the video I did, I don't know, several weeks ago, where I used the Liquitex gel medium.
Yeah.
And I mixed in tea leaves with it to make mud.
Yep.
That stuff is significantly cheaper than buying AK Interactive stuff.
Yeah. I don't know if anybody here has used, being I'm a watercolor artist, you get the it's a masking agent. It's like a rubber masking agent. You put it over your watercolor stuff, and then you paint over top of it with your watercolors. And when you're done, you just grab a hold of it and it just peels right off. And it works really good. Like if you wanted to put camouflage on something, you just paint it over the areas you want. You paint the vehicle one color, and then you put that over top of it, and then you paint it again or lay down, and you just peel off some paint over that and stuff like that. And then wherever you pull it off, then you got the underlying colors are still there.
So, theoretically, I would say that despite it being such a huge community and gone on for so long, like scale modeling, that there likely is a back and forth that should happen with all of the various types of scale modeling, is where people learn from each other. Like, what is the strength of tabletop wargame when it comes to hobby stuff? And I would say that it's working with really small people and wanting to make them look really good, in the sense of, I'm not trying to disrespect anybody, but like, sometimes, like in certain aspects where you put a miniature of a person, like you don't care that it's the most detailed part of the table. Like you're trying to make a beautiful table for a train to go through, and you might not want to spend 3 days on the little person there. Like you actually just want it to look a certain way, and like, at a distance for what you want, that's perfect. But when it's, let's say, a skirmish game and that's your main character, like you actually want that to look like you spent a lot of time on that. And so theoretically, I'd like to think that we all learn from each other, but then also at times the area you care the most about, you make advancements in, and somebody could learn from that. Like even from the scale model hobby could learn something, back and forth. But I'm kind of the opinion that unless I personally make it a point to go to that side and actually absorb a little bit, that there's a lot of stuff I'm just not going to see, for the most part. Like, and so really, the message for me is like, I would probably learn a lot if even just every once in a while, I just go to places where those folks congregate and just look at what they're doing. I'm probably going to see things like more often than not that I've not seen before.
And that's one of the reasons why I spend a lot of time. I have a good chunk of channels that I watch on YouTube that are modeling channels, just for the fact that they do stuff that we normally don't see, or that occasionally you do see them, but it's usually that somebody's a crossover that does modeling kits, or they watch modeling channels and apply it elsewhere. So
I will normally go through the comments in order, but I must say, Chris, if you're buying Chinchilla Dust now, if you go into the bottom, there is a link to an Amazon that you can. Just kidding.
and Palmer gets 5%.
That's right. I for every Chinchilla Dust people get, I get 1 penny.
It's almost the Chinchilla Dust is almost like this, about the same equivalent of this. We used to have a chinchilla.
You know what I find? It seems like it's almost slightly crystalline powder. Like it's I don't know what it's made of, but it's so fine. But it has almost like a slightly synthetic feel to it.
Well, it's very silky.
Yeah. It doesn't feel like sand, like in the same, like to me when I first looked at it, it was just different. But you said you used to have a chinchilla, so all that's. Yeah. Did you allow it to have a bath with Chinchilla Dust, or did you just let it?
Well, the kids took care of it. We had the little ball that we'd put the chinchilla in and run around the house with it in the ball. And then if it started getting near the stairs, like, oh, it's getting near the stairs. It's not going to enjoy that going down the stairs. But
are they nocturnal?
Yes.
So, like, do they pretty much try to sleep during the day?
Pretty much. And then during at night, you'd hear it's like that's why you'd put them in the ball at night and they'd run around the house. You're
mildly nocturnal, so it might be even a good fit right now for you, right?
It was not a big issue for me. But
you're like, hey, buddy, you want a beer too?
Now we had the
drunk chinchilla. That would be interesting.
Chinchilla kicked it back. Yeah, you want some scotch? There you go. It was the kids at school. They had chinchillas, and then they had a bunch of them. And it's like if they send them home with the kids, they don't live very long. It's like maybe a year or two on average. So they're short short-term little rodents, but
Yeah.
they're
Well,
kind of fun.
shall we go to the comments and then come back for another round on the topic? Does that sound good?
Sure.
All right. Well, we got, Dwayne says, I really like the early 2000 orc sculpts. I never, this is from our talk just prior to the topic. I just never got into the fantasy orc armies as I felt the rules for them were dire. Not a fan of your own units damaging themselves. And, you know, like my thought on that is just the animosity that's found in it. Like my impression is that you really have to be pretty lighthearted as an orc player in like Warhammer Fantasy Battles. Like in the sense that you have to kind of embrace that nature of like, your own army like squabbling within itself and having it go against you at times, but then when you do have things work out and it just the payoff is that much greater. Like that's my thought. So Eric says, yeah, camo paint, I always made my Joes wear it. Oh, so yeah, that's right. Did I?
Yeah, we went through that.
Yeah, you did.
I already mentioned. Okay, sorry. I obviously have gotten through my first class already here. So. Let's see here.
After the paint pens, where I was
this is the one I was actually meant to click on.
Yeah.
This was the first one on our topic. You can apply a lot of scale model techniques and apply them to wargaming pieces. You just need to ensure it will survive handling on the tabletop via varnish. That's true. I mean, yeah. The whole topic of like painting just for it to look great versus having painting for utility is a whole nother
kind of
discussion.
brings up an interesting point, is that if you're putting on like dust effects, you know, you look at a model and you put a whole bunch of dust effects on like your gaming piece, and then when you seal it and it kind of disappears, you actually have to put more details into your dust effects and stuff before you seal it, because once you put the sealant on it, it kind of dulls it down a bit. So that's something, a little bit of tip there for somebody that hasn't done it yet.
Absolutely. Eric says, yes, water fights at the wash rack. I think he's referring to your comment there, Musty.
Most definitely. It's like you get into the wash racks, and it's like you go in and they have this big area where you can crawl underneath, and you get underneath the tank. And some of them are like a little where you can actually almost stand underneath it. And sometimes the drain gets plugged, and it's like, private, get down there and plug that. It's like, oh man, down into the murk.
Dwayne says Machina Krieger stuff. That's nice. That's the model that I brought out there. That's the name that I didn't pronounce fully. It's been around for a real long time, and Chris mentioned it as well. It's got quite a following, that line of models. And Dredd is the guy I've referenced for the Mr. Surfacer. He's been around a long time in the YouTube community, early YouTuber. Bradley Silent Mouse just corrected my pronunciation of Brisbane. I apologize to those within Australia. I didn't say that correctly. It's like when I used to say Mordheim when I first saw the word and had somebody kind of shriek.
It's Mordheim.
That's right. Okay, David says, oh yeah, I've heard of the greatness of Chinchilla Dust. And then Chris says, I'm buying Chinchilla Dust right now. It is, I don't think you'll regret it if you like to do terrain, as I know you do.
Yeah.
Stuff. It is a good tool. Okay, so Dwayne says apparently it's volcanic dust, which I guess then it is not synthetic as I suggested. But when I said that it felt like it was crystalline, like that kind of makes sense to me that that's what it's from, because it just didn't seem like sand to me, which I guess sand is just glass that's really, I don't know,
it's quartz.
Technically
sand
like quartz.
is usually just quartz.
Yeah, the different grades, but this just feels really different, the fineness of it.
To me, it kind of almost like graphite in texture to me.
Yeah.
At least the stuff that we bought. So
Dwayne says animosity is the dumbest expression of orcs infighting on the tabletop. Yes, orcs in fight when there is no one else around to fight. They will fight themselves. I don't know.
But if there's a nice juicy target in front of them, they go kill that first, then fight over the spoils with each other.
Dang, one glass down. Lots of BattleTech talk tonight.
Not
Yeah.
till now.
I didn't do quite a two full. I didn't quite do 2 full fingers. But I'll have to top this off because I'm not going to be able to.
I think you had about a 1 finger.
Well, compared to what, yeah, and also you have to be interested in what Vic had there. Like when we started the show, like I was like, damn, that's all tequila. Like even with the ice, that was a lot. That was nothing compared. Mine was nothing.
That's how you're supposed to smile.
That's a true Musty drink.
Now, if I run out, I can just reach behind me and. I got enough for you right here.
What's that? The same thing that
This would be like Johnny Walker Red, but it's
Okay.
it's made by Costco for Costco.
Okay,
Oh,
cool.
yeah.
Cool. I thought you meant it was the same stuff that Vic had there. I'd never seen that before. That stuff. But actually, not to diverge, but we do all the time. Do you guys ever have grappa?
Yes.
Yeah.
I
It's
am-
lighter fluid.
Sorry.
I said it's lighter fluid.
Well, yeah, that's why I bring it up. Is that I got an authentic from Italy delivered to me from my in-laws bottle of grappa a couple of years ago, and I made it every time I went to my cabin. I made it like the christening of walking through the door. I would have a shot of this stuff, and initially, like some people would say, like it's like Sharpie, like like the smell, and like like all these like things you're saying. And initially, I was like, whoa, like that. That I like whiskey, straight, but man, this is tough, like, but now I've kind of like developed and acquired a taste for it, and I'm almost done. I've almost finished the bottle with all the trips I've taken to the cabin. And so, what's that one?
Smells like Bondo.
So you have grappa right there?
No.
No, that's the stuff from Costco.
Oh, that's
This is
still
stuff
the
from
same
Costco.
bottle.
This is Johnny Walker Red, but
Okay.
it smells like Bondo.
Bondo. I think,
I'll pass. Thanks.
yeah. Yeah, exactly.
It's just peated scotch. But
Well, I was kind of, I don't know how they make grappa, but I would have thought it would have been some sort of derivative of wine,
It is.
it's brandy.
It's the distilled grape rinds. So
Okay.
once they're done squeezing out all the juice for the wine, they then distill the grape rinds, and that's how you get grappa.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had
It's a sour. All
Yeah,
the
it
tannins that are left over.
It's pretty intense. I don't know how to describe it, honestly. How do you just? I
lighter
don't
You know
know.
the sweet tarts? The sweet tarts?
It's been a
Yeah.
while since I've had one. Yeah.
That's what comes to mind when it's like a sweet tart that you're drinking.
See, I don't find grappa sweet.
But it's the sweet tarts are tart.
Okay. Okay.
the sour.
Very
Okay.
sour.
Yeah, maybe that's it. But I have come to like it, and part of it's psychological too, because when I go to my cabin, it's to get away from society. Like, and so basically, when I walk through that door, I've now kind of associated that taste with entering my kind of reprieve. And so
So it's like you've been Pavloved.
I guess so. I think it's psychological.
Yeah.
So. We got Chris here that says, that was a major segue. We got Chris here. That was a musty segue. I'm going to try oils again after 25 years.
Don't drink the oils.
Yeah.
It's a timely comment.
Quaker State. Stay away from the Quaker State.
Yeah.
Don't drink it.
Yeah. Penn's oil with a little lemon in it. That's pretty good.
With a lemon chaser.
I think I've really enjoyed using artist oils, for oil washes for quite some time now. I think they're really interesting, and some of the effects you can get are quite immediately. And I don't have a lot of oil color. Like I know Vic has not only mentioned it tonight, but he's shown a lot on his channel. I have like 5 that I use here that are like standby ones for oil washes and just certain things. Like black, brown, white, red, and yellow is what I have basically. But what I will say is I am interested in the future to actually, because of the gentleman that's on the show tonight, Vic, he actually paints some models exclusively with oils. And I think it's really cool. Reason being, I just find that it creates a look. When I see people doing oils, it creates a look that I don't know the best way to describe it, but it has.
Palmer,
Yeah,
you are a
novice.
neophyte. There you go. Need some oil paints?
Rusty's crushing me right now.
Need some oil paint?
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. They're expensive. I get them one at
yeah.
a time because of how expensive they are. Like I got good brands, but they're kind of expensive. But I don't know the best way to describe the look, but when I see you doing your musketeers and some of your stuff, I guess the word I would say is classical. Like I find that at times I'm going to just blow that up, but at times it can create a bit of a classical look with the color palette that I associate with oils, and it's really nice. Like it's just a nice change.
You can't focus on that.
Yeah, it's sometimes hard with the webcams.
Yeah.
But the only thing I noticed, and I'm sure there's ways to maybe matte it down, but I noticed anytime I work with oil that the first thing that I need to consider is the fact that it has a bit of a glossier effect than when I'm working with more of an oily look, like a shinier look at times. But I'm guessing that there are techniques you can do, like using mattes and things like that, to sort of beat that down if you wanted to.
So that's what you're thinning. That extra shine you're getting is what you're thinning it with.
Okay, like turpentine and things like that, and turpenoid.
Yeah. So I use that to thin my oil paints,
and that's what I use too.
And the trick to this, right, is you use very little of it. Okay, and the thinner you get the oil paint, the less gloss it will have, because it will actually dry faster. So oil paints, if you put it on real thick, it takes a long time for it to dry.
Yeah.
It'll retain that sheen. Okay, but you notice the figure that I just showed you is not shiny, and that's
true.
That's all oil paints, and this is all I use to thin it.
And you've said on your channel that you will do like many thin coats, which in all honesty, that is the mantra of acrylic too, is that most of the time, we're not told to actually goop paint on. Like we're always told to thin it, even with acrylics. But I guess in the case of oils, it just helps with that glossiness, is what you're saying, to take it away.
And it really depends on the effect that you want. Right? If you're looking at let's say something a little bit more modern, right? If let's say you're going to paint like Black Widow or something like that, right? And you're going to paint that black suit, you want a little shine to it, right? So leaving or using a medium that allows it to retain that shine that the oil has, then you can do that, and then you can play with those two things, right? You're going to put it on a little bit thicker, it'll retain the shine, and you can do that in certain areas, so you can play with it back and forth. So it really depends on the effect you're going for. Obviously, with the Three Musketeers stuff, I want it to be very muted.
Yeah.
Even though it was a colorful period, it was also a very dirty period.
Right. And I guess it must translate to the painting too, because when I think of oils, I think of oil painting, and they must, when they do their paintings, not want them to be shiny at times. But a lot of the older ones, like when I think of going to the museums, if you look at like an oil painting on an angle with like light going on it, like it will have like an immediate glare sometimes, right? For that reason, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, and don't forget, when you're going to the museum and you're looking at an oil painting that was painted in 300 years ago or whatever, the way they made that oil paint was very different than the way we make things now.
Yeah.
The chemistry is different. The way they use it is different. And in some cases, some of these painters would, put a layer down and they wouldn't come back to it for 6 weeks before they put the next layer on top of that.
Right.
So, it's the style or techniques have changed quite a bit because the medium has changed.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, back in the day, before we had all these washes like from Games Workshop, like all these little tubs of wash that you can get, you had to make your own, and that was making them out of oil paints. And when I remember when Games Workshop was like, "Hey, try this out. It makes a great wash," and all it was inks.
Mm-hmm.
And it took forever for them to dry, and then if it did, it would bleed over pretty badly.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, I'm just still using my old washes. And eventually, when they came out with these Games Workshop stuff came out, I've gotten lazy in the last 15 years because I've basically just buying oil washes or the washes from GW instead of making my own.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. We've got some interesting comments coming in here just on what we're talking here. Let's see. I used oils in my youth because that's what we had, kind of similar to what you're saying there, Rusty. Eric says, night guys. I think Eric's probably already gone. See ya, Eric.
See ya.
The face paint worked out pretty well. Flesh, then a few somewhat dry swipes of olive, and then some lighter swipes of loam, and then washed. Yeah. I don't know what loam is. Is that just a type of color?
Yeah.
Okay. Brett says oils can be used in miniature painting, and I think Vic's shown that many times on his channel, and there are some people that are still doing it. I think in our hobby, I'd have to say it's still pretty rare that I see somebody do it. But yeah, like some people still do it.
It used to be more common back in the day, but because a lot of people only had access to oil paints, didn't have a lot of these acrylic paints. I started off using the enamels, like testers, and then found that you could use the art stuff was applicable, and then I found that they had the P3s, not the P3s, but polyester paints, like these polyester paints. Started using those.
Mm-hmm.
But
looks like we've got Matt from Rocky's War Room. Is that correct? Yep.
Hey, Matt.
And David says, I'd say 6 weeks between applying paint seems like a long time, but I definitely have minis that have gone longer between paint.
Yeah, they collected more dust than they do paint sometimes.
Let's see here.
One thing I will say is the one thing about painting with oils is it teaches you patience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like if you're going for a certain effect or something like that, it forces you to put it down, or you will screw it up really fast.
Yeah.
But there's an appeal too. Like I like the idea of long-term projects, and I don't even mean just hobbying. Like when we've talked about solo wargaming, it's like having that sort of table on the side where like you're doing something over time and thinking about it, and it's like a long-term project. Like I always think of Blade Runner, like they're like the two guys, it's not solo wargaming, but they're doing the chess game where they call each other in the middle of the night and they're like, rook to whatever, and they're like, what?
What are you thinking?
Like, we've been doing this game for a year now. What do you mean? Like, it's been 3 months since we've done a move. But
right.
It's this idea that, like, with the oil painting, you could have like this project on the side, and you're working on this over a matter of months as a side thing, and like whatever. Like, I find that stuff appealing too. Like, and so I could see that being a good thing in some ways if you have the patience for it.
You're talking about that scene from Blade Runner. It reminds me of Avalon Hill games that we played by mail.
That's what we used to do. Yeah.
Right. You write everything down, and then I think they even sold forms, if I remember correctly, for playing by mail. So you could record everything, right, and then you'd send it off, and
you'd write down the hex and what units are going, because you have the unit counters and everything with the unit on there. It's like, I want this unit or is going to move to this hex, do this, and then you would have a system out. It's like on this day, it's like what the number on that stock would be, the whatever you were setting up would be what the die roll would be.
Yep. And then it could be months before you got a response.
Yeah.
That reminds me of is did you guys ever see, like, in the 80s, I think it was either late 70s or 80s, probably 80s, where you could mail in and play a move with the Hyboria, like the Conan world? And, like, basically, you represented a nation within Hyboria, and then you were, like, it was basically like a Risk kind of game. It wasn't like even though it was like a Conan world, it wasn't meant to be like person on person, but it was meant to, you actually control this nation, and it was you actually, like, literally snail mailing in what your things you're going to do with your country. Like, if you were like Samaria or whatever, like, you would say what that is. I actually was so intrigued by that when I was a kid to be able to do that, but it cost money and it required, like, mailing things in. So I was like, oh man, like, I would love to do this, but it just sounds like I'm not going to be able to. But that kind of stuff sounds pretty cool.
Yeah, it's one of those things where you had to have a dedicated gaming space to be able to do these things.
Yeah.
Which that's coming up tonight. That was a nice segue, Rusty. That was really good. Chris says, when acrylic paint actual washes showed up on the market, I slowly switched.
Yeah,
Chris
same
says,
here.
it's Matt. Hi, hoser. Okay. Oh my God, playing by mail. Oh, memories.
Right.
Hello, Ed. Ed says, tried to do some play-by-mail back then, didn't have the patience for it. So I've never tried it, but I was really intrigued because it was before like online, like the internet, like to begin with. And this idea of playing against other people that you didn't know, like in another place, it was just intriguing, right? You know, and to be a part of it, like, it was just kind of neat. Now technology's really closed the gap, you know, and tremendously, like, you can do so many things.
Yeah, you could always speed it up too, because, you know, eventually you could always trade phone numbers and then actually call on certain days. Just trade the information back and forth and write it down and then do it. And
there was always the inevitable argument. You didn't say you moved that there. How'd that get there?
Yeah.
Matt says, mad respect for Vic. Good show, fellas. Thanks for stopping by, Matt. Appreciate that.
Matt, you are perfect, Matt. We all live to be like you.
I sense there's a bond between you two. This is getting kind of personal.
Matt has some mad painting skills. Okay? If you're not following his channel, you should be, because he puts on some fantastic after action reports for games. And his painting skills are on point. And the stuff that he does with all his Wild West buildings and everything he's done are amazing. I mean, they're just simply perfect as far as I'm concerned.
Nice. Excellent. That's the nice thing about the YouTube community. There's just so many great people in it. And we actually have some folks that are not on YouTube that come to this, but we are, I think, kind of YouTube driven, Musty Wargamers, in a lot of ways. Even though we're on Facebook, like, we're kind of, most of the folks are either folks we've met locally or YouTube driven. I think we're starting to get folks that occasionally come through Facebook and find out about us, but it's always been usually the other way, because we have such a great community on YouTube for wargaming, I think. So, well, we're kind of you have something you'd like to say back to Matt? Vic? I don't know. We can kind of keep this going. So we kind of gone through the comments for the most part, but and looks like we got Gary that came in over from the UK. Thank you. He's actually been coming in early in the, like, really late there / early. Say hello.
Gary.
It's really cool.
Getting up, getting ready for work, and he says, "Hey, these guys are on. I gotta say hi."
Another great YouTube channel.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Gary's got a great channel.
Yeah.
Doesn't have enough subscribers, that's for sure.
And Gary's actually building, if you watch his show, he's building a man cave right now. And that is another interesting segue into our next topic for the evening.
I think that was planned, right? You asked Gary to show up right now, right?
And I asked him to build his man cave so we could talk about dedicated hobby spaces.
See, Palmer's the strategist. He's moving all the pieces on the board just to set up this show.
I'm low on experience.
Plan.
Low on experience, but extremely high on organization. So, Rusty, for a second there, you kind of tricked me, Rusty. I thought you froze with your laptop tonight because you were like, you looked like you froze there for a moment, but then you moved. It's kind of like having a pet lizard. You were like frozen there for a moment.
I like one of those. It's the angels, weeping angels in Doctor Who. When you look, you're not looking. It's like they move.
That's right. Matt's going to set up a room for you guys next time, so that's good. So next topic, and I'll introduce it, and maybe Rusty, if you want this time, just to kind of go first on it, is just switch it up. I hesitate when bringing this topic up, but I actually think that it is a good topic, and for a lot of people, dedicated hobby space is a really positive thing. For the longest time, I didn't have a dedicated hobby space, and I used many of the techniques. Like sometimes they have like hobby trays and systems that you can combine things into. Sometimes you don't have the ability to do it, and it's just not an option. But once I got my own space, the moment I would walk into that area, my stress levels would just sort of come down. And or whatever, like I don't walk around stressed out all the time. I don't want to give that impression, but I do feel better. Like the moment in my day when I have that time carved out to just go and do that, having that space was great for me. But there's a lot of, I think, aspects and benefits to having your own dedicated hobby space. And so I thought it might be good just to talk about it tonight. As you look at the screen, you can see that behind all three of us, we have miniature and wargaming and hobby stuff. And so, there is nobody here that I will accept that will say they don't have a dedicated hobby space. I kind of personally know that you guys both do, but this wasn't even planned. Like, it's just, you guys, we all have dedicated hobby spaces at this point in our hobby career. And so, Rusty, what are your thoughts on the importance, benefits, et cetera, of this?
Well, it's extremely beneficial, especially this last year when you have game stores. As your only place you can go to play is at the game shop or the club, and that's been shut down. People have been saying, all I got is my kitchen table, or even in a small apartment, they have no place to do anything with. And I'm lucky enough that, my hobby space is shrunk because I've turned it into the man cave basement. So, because originally this whole basement used to be my area. I had 2 tables set up. I had my weight area set up over here. And then eventually we'd move the couch down here and TV. The next, it's like now it's like I got sofas, recliners, big screen TV on the wall, all my books, etc. But it's a very important thing to have a dedicated space to be able just to escape to relax in, play a game when your buddies. Like this weekend, I think we're going to come over to my house here, and they'll be playing right here on the table. So it's always nice to be able to have a place to go to. There was a time when this was the go-to place because nobody else had hobby space to go to, and I was the one with it. So everybody would travel to my place and we'd play all the time. So then eventually others got their own house to play in or etc. So but still right now Mel, he has a dedicated table to play on, and it's just the 2 of us right now. It's like one of the other guys, he has the kitchen table, they set up and move stuff off of it to play on it and then set back up again. So
Rusty, when was the last time, if ever, you didn't have a dedicated hobby space for this hobby?
1988 to 89.
And so what did you do then?
Played on the kitchen table.
But what I mean, like for actual painting and stuff.
That was, like I said, it's like I had a coffee tray, the little TV tray type thing.
Yeah.
I'd open it up, set it up in front of the TV, and I would sit there in front of the TV, and I would use it to paint on.
Yeah.
And that was my dedicated hobby space. And then, because we lived in an apartment, and the kitchen table was the game area, or I would sit in front of the TV with a little TV tray thing to put my little few paints out there, and it's like, oh, I need this paint. Reach into the because I had basically a tackle box. Open it up, and I kept all my paints and brushes and everything inside there, and that was what it would open up, pull when I need out, use it, and then put it back in because it was.
So your dedicated hobby space was as dedicated as like a first boyfriend.
Yeah.
Right? Like, because when you basically you pull the stuff out and then you have to clean up every time.
Yeah.
So like and I hate to say this, but it's just one of the great things for me about a dedicated hobby space is not only do I not have to put everything away every single time. Like if I'm working on a model, I don't have to find a spot where it can't be seen. You know what I mean? Because there are other people using that area and it's in the way, it'll either get broken or this or that. And also everything, like as far as paints and just everything like that you have, if you want, like a lot of people do choose to put their paints back every time, but you can actually essentially,
you can see
the glory of the gaming table. Like we're all kind of starting to salivate.
Right
Miniatures
like,
on a green table.
The dedicated hobby table over there is covered in miniatures and role-playing games and all kinds of stuff right now. But tomorrow it's going to be cleaned off to, make sure the gaming space is ready for gaming again. But,
so yeah, like you don't have to necessarily put all your paints back or every single one or every single thing at all times and make it look like another room every single time you're finished. And that's what I mean by like, it sounds to me like it wasn't really a dedicated hobby space. Like you was really like, you had to pull everything out and probably put everything back and like do a lot of shuffling around and all that stuff. Which that's one of the benefits I think of having a dedicated space.
Now there was a time when the kids, like when my son was a baby and then when my daughter came along, this part of the area ended up becoming like the kids' play area because we had toys down here they could play with. And I would be working and playing or doing stuff myself, and they could be playing at the same time so I could keep an eye on them. So they had their, the toy area. And then for a while there, it's like I had to, it's like, how am I going to corral them to keep them away from my stuff? And
that's actually a really good point, Rusty. Sorry, my pointer. You actually mentioned something that I thought of in the past, but I hadn't thought of for tonight, and that is one of the negatives of a dedicated. I didn't really think of any negatives of a dedicated hobby space, but one of them is that it removes you from your the people you live with, and so there is a bit of a. Many of us have talked about there is like a guilt at times when this hobby, you can spend lots of time, really focused on what you want to do and really long hours and doing stuff. And one of the nice things, and I even made a little wooden tray after I had a dedicated hobby space. I made a little I personally built my own little painting tray to be able to go up and be close to my family while I'm doing something.
Yeah.
If I want to be around them and doing this at the same time. And I think that's an excellent point. I think that's a negative sometimes of a dedicated hobby space is that it can close you off. Like by the solace in your kingdom that make you feel so good at times can close you off from everybody else.
Yeah. So if you have, in my case, if they had people come over and I would have to have, corral the kids into a certain area, but we'd have it set up so I could keep an eye on them. They could play and we'd have our game, they're playing their game stuff or whatever they'd be doing. But you'd all still had to keep one eye on them, one on you, and keep them corralled basically. And then when the time comes, it's like, it was hard is if you want to focus on trying to paint something and you want to focus on painting and then having the kids around, it's like, oh man, it's like you have a hard time focusing on stuff. But then when they got to a certain age, it's like, oh, they're going to do their own things. It's like, my daughter was never a problem. She was like, leave me alone. I just want to go read my books.
So Vic, what do you think? What is your thought on a dedicated hobby space, importance, positive, negatives, etc.?
Well, while you guys were talking about it, I was trying to think about when's the last time I didn't have one. And I think I've always had a dedicated spot to do something, right? It may have been something very small. And when I was living in Las Vegas and I was starting to kind of get into the hobby, I only had a small folding table set up in this little mud room that was next to the door going outside into our backyard in Vegas. And I only had, I didn't have any storage space or anything else. It was just, I had a few paints, I had a couple of paintbrushes, I had the miniatures on the table, and I would paint there. And even when I moved up here to Oregon, I did at the time, my wife at that time, in the apartment, I bought a drafting table. And I was able to find a small little niche for the drafting table that I could just put up there. And it was a little bit larger, right? So I could expand a little bit. And then when I married my current wife, I didn't have a painting space there because we didn't have the room. And we eventually ended up remodeling the house a little bit. We gained, I don't know, 300 square feet extra.
Mm-hmm.
And one of those rooms, we ended up putting part of her sewing area into, and I made a little painting area.
Mm-hmm.
And it was about the time that our daughter was born. And what I used to do with her, kind of like what Rusty would do, we had bought her an easel. So while I was painting figures, she was painting on the easel. Mm-hmm. So she would sit there and paint with me, so she would be working with me. But it wasn't until we got to the house that we're currently living in where I really have a spot.
Yeah.
It's, all laid out and everything. I'm going to disappear for a second. So,
Mm-hmm.
It's my area. There's all my board games and all that kind of fun stuff, and all my other hobby books, and I've got a couple of IKEA cabinets. It
looks tight and organized, actually. I'm not gonna circle around my room. I'll talk about that in a second, but I'm not gonna show you guys my room.
But that for the most part is where I can do the mechanics of the hobby, right? I'm painting up here, I'm building stuff, I'm doing all that kind of stuff, but I don't have a dedicated playing area. So like what I was saying earlier, when my friend Sean came over a couple of weeks ago and we played a game, it was on our dining room table. Now granted, it's it's a very in Her Majesty's Name is a very small game, right? It only takes 3 feet by 3 feet playing area.
Yeah. So
it's easy to contain. So I've never actually had a spot where I could set up a game.
Like a big, something you do like at a gaming place, yeah.
Right,
I'm the same. Like I do the dining room table thing too, actually.
Yeah. But I think if I had to set something up, like a small little table or something, every time I wanted to do something, I'd probably get even less done. Mm-hmm. I could come upstairs and I can sit and I can paint for hours. Because of COVID, my wife's working from home. So when I'm home, she could be working up here across from me and I can be over here painting.
Yeah.
Or working on something. So we get that time together. And then if we want to be separate, she'll go downstairs and watch TV and she'll crochet and I'll stay upstairs and paint.
Yeah.
So it works out. I think that's one of the things that I do miss is actually having a dedicated gaming spot. I would actually like to have that because there are things that I would like to do. I just can't physically do it because I don't have the space.
Yeah. The only way I could do it, I have an area where in my basement where I could, if I just kind of moved the couch, like put out something as long as it had something that I could set up and take down quickly. But I don't have a spot like Rusty has. Mainly because we want to keep our area, like we don't have the exact same setup, and I want to keep our area where we can watch movies and stuff, like, as a family. And I don't think I have a spot where I could just leave a gaming table comfortably in that room. But I could erect something and have a fairly good, gaming table, as long as I figured out how to do it. And I just really haven't spent the time,
The current table I have, or tables actually, it's these folding table types that you can go to like Costco or someplace like that and buy them.
Yep.
And I have 2 of them, and they're just up permanently all the time, but they can be pulled down and moved anywhere I want to. And I also have a 4x8 piece of plywood table I made back in 90, I think it was, when we moved in one of our houses that we were renting at the time, going from from apartment to a house. And I can just set them up on sawhorses real quick.
So you just take the wood and just put it onto sawhorses? That's what you have? Yeah. Okay. It's because you can't really see it, and that's why I was wondering. I wasn't sure if you had the tables you meant that you had from Costco and you just put the plywood on top of it, or you actually use the sawhorses.
Well, I have both. I have sawhorses. I can have 2 tables up if I want to. Okay. But I really don't, because we don't really need anything, because this is like a 5x6 table. They're both I think they're 2.5 by 6 tables. They're folding tables, and I've got them set up side by side, and they make a nice little table. And I just throw the felt over top of them. And if we need them to go for something else, like say we need, like when my kids had their graduation parties, I took them and put them outside. So
yeah,
and they're really easy, and they weren't all that expensive to have, picked up. So they're easy to put up. It's like if you have a space, like in your room right there, you could put them up for like having a game, and then when you're done, you just fold them up, put them in a corner someplace out of the way.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that's the handy thing about them.
I could get a comfortable 4x6 table situation going on in here, just this room, like if I wanted to in the center. But granted, like right now, you'd be stepping all over stuff on the outside everywhere. I'd have to actually do something. But sometimes when I see people's YouTube channels and they have in their basement these Napoleonic, and I say Napoleonic tables because they typically are Napoleonics, these Napoleonic 28 mil tables where they have like 12 feet long. Yeah, like ridiculously big tables. They're like, and in many cases, they'll make homemade tiles, that they all move around and stuff. But most of the time, I'm not seeing games on them. I'm usually just seeing like these amazing tables, and I'm just seeing like, the possibilities. Like, so they show the table and the possibilities. I don't usually see the games. But I look at it and I'm like, I just see this as like a blank canvas of like, oh my God, that's amazing. Like, it's like, that's so cool, and I do think that that's really neat. And I guess dedicated hobby space for me, because I consider myself a 90% painter and a 10% gamer as far as the way I spend my time. Dedicated hobby space for me is a topic tonight revolved around painting, but I think in a lot of ways that's a false assumption of mine. I think it's evolved like in the way we're talking about, also including gaming, you know what I mean? Because that's part of our hobby as Wargamers. And it's interesting that kind of went that way. I didn't really expect that, only because I'm so focused on painting with my painting room, and I don't even really I think about gaming usually as a place I go to, like, to do. I don't think about it, even if it's the dining room, just to temporarily set up a non-dedicated space to game. But that's a good point. Like, you can have a dedicated gaming space, which is part of your hobby. And for many people, they have that. And I can see the advantage of that for sure.
I know.
Also, go ahead, Vic.
So like a friend of mine, he lived in an apartment, but he rented a garage, which was separate from his apartment. And what he did was he had a 4x8 piece of plywood, and we put 2 pulleys up in the ceiling of the garage. And when he wanted a game, he'd pull a car out, park it on the street, and we'd hoist the table down. He had these legs that he had built to attach to the table so it would rest on something. And then we could game. And then when we were done, we'd clear everything off and pull it back up into the ceiling of or the roof of the garage. It's really, how far do you want to go to get your gaming in, right?
Yeah. It's a lot of ingenuity there.
Yeah. The first time we looked at it, we were like, okay, is that going to work? We all expecting it. That's going to fall on your car one of these days, dude. You know? But yeah, it's, I just haven't gotten to that point yet. And for the longest time until, this past year with COVID and everything, we were a friend of ours who was part of our gaming group. He had a basement that was always, it had 4 tables that he had bought from IKEA that he just put together. And it was, I don't know, I want to say it was like 4 feet wide by 12 feet long ish. And because they were individual tables, we could adjust it. We can move them around. We could do whatever we needed to do. And he was always playing board games. So he's always had a set of tables set up. So I didn't worry about having a dedicated gaming spot because we were always gaming there.
Yeah.
This past year, there was nobody to game with, right, in person. And then, only recently and now, and it's just my friend Sean and I now. So yeah, it's evolved,
I guess I've talked a lot tonight on this topic already because I'm actually way into my second drink. I haven't really followed the rules of turns and things like that, but I'll just literally just kind of just say a little bit about my history with the gaming space and the way you guys have. And that is, when I got back into tabletop gaming in 2011, I had an antique roll-top desk in this room, and this room was totally different. It's been redone since then. Nothing extravagant.
This was the fish room, right?
That's right. It was a fish room. I had like a whole saltwater setup where I'm sitting right now. Right in front of me, I'd be staring at fish tanks. But behind me, I had an antique roll-top desk, and I had a whole series of storage cabinets that I could hide away anything that I had. And then I had this antique roll-top desk that I could flip up and flip down of what I was working on. And it was this it technically was kind of my room, but it had like games for the family and storage in there of like miscellaneous items. But it was like the roll-top desk was my dedicated hobby space, and then I combined anything that I had for the hobby in with everybody else's stuff in here. And then we converted a guest room that was in our basement into my hobby room at one point, so I could have a dedicated hobby space. And that was the first time I had a hobby room like all to myself. And I've said this many times on my channel, like I do remember like after work, like a long days of work, coming home and after doing stuff with the kids and like, because my wife works late in the evenings and I would oftentimes do dinner like in the evenings for them. I remember like walking down the hall, and the moment I would start walking down this hall towards my door to my hobby room, I would just feel like the stuff like lift off of me, like, and I would go in there, and I don't think you necessarily have to have anything wrong with you to just feel like when you have time to yourself and you just get that moment, there is a form of relaxation that comes with it, right? And I've heard many people talk about it, like, it's relaxing to get that time that to spend on what you want to do. And to me, the room very much, and even just walking into it provided that. Like before I even got to the hobby, and then when I got to the hobby, it kicked it up another notch. And so for me, I like that. But then for a lot of the other stuff, being able to just have my stuff out and not have to worry about, I would like my hobby space to be in my hobby room to be cleaner and more organized than it is. And I do find when I do that, I feel great about hobbying. Like the more I actually keep it neat and like the way I want it, then like I actually get invigorated to be in the space more. It kind of goes through this fluctuation. Like if my life is in a bit of chaos at the moment, it gets very chaotic in my hobby room. But in the moment I kind of draw everything back in, I enjoy being in that spot. But being able to leave things out, being able to stage projects, being able to stage future projects, and like all of that stuff, I find really beneficial, and not having to worry about being in where other people are. When my kids were younger, I don't have to worry about them maybe grabbing something fragile and breaking it or something like that. And so I think, like you guys said, like it's great to have a spot that's just your own regardless what you do. I mean, some people, like like to work on cars, and like they have their garage and they spend a lot of time in the garage, like, and it's just like the same problem. I'm guessing it's the same feeling. I mean, a lot of people just call it a man cave, you know, and like a man cave is really what we're talking about here in many respects, you know. But like you said, Vic, I mean, I think there are advantages to also having situations where you could share a space. Like you could have your half of the room to be doing what you're doing, and then somebody else in your family is also working there too. And I I have teenagers, and my oldest likes to kind of, have you ever heard of this before? Like teenagers like to go into their room and never come out. Like you know, yeah, like, I don't know if you've heard of that. And so I have an artist in my family. As a matter of fact, like one of my daughters actually wants to go into the creative aspect of work for her career. And, you know, so she could be doing this stuff with me, but she would rather probably just be in her room doing it than with me. I think it would be great to actually, I would be totally open to be closer to people and to doing things, but the current situation is that I'm here and this is it. And so yeah, so I've evolved. I've moved. I eventually did move back to this place, and only because I never thought I would get an even bigger room than I had in the guest room. And back to this room, only me. But my wife suggested it, so she said, like, take it, like, do whatever you want with it. And so we basically.
I think she was just trying to say, just like, go make that room, shut the door, and leave me alone.
That's right.
Yeah.
Just take it, go in there. But you know, one thing I realized is that dedicated, like, there is no room big enough to contain the madness, and so like you can fill any space, like with miniatures, with small things, and so no matter what space you get, it's never big enough unless you're smart about trying to keep things manageable and being, you know, smart about storing stuff and things like that. So,
well, a good example about taking up space is we had our old entertainment center for the old tube TV that was upstairs, and it's like, you know, my wife says, that is that we're ever going to use that TV? And I was like, well, not really, because you can't even. The VCR that was hooked up to it died eventually, and it's like, never use it. And it's like, why don't you just throw it out? And I was like, okay. So I did, and it's like, should we just throw that entertainment center away? And I was like, no, I think I could probably repurpose it for something else. And when she's gone, I went to Menards and bought some shelving, and I drilled holes in it. I put pegs in there, and then she comes home, and so I had it moved downstairs, and I turned it into a bookshelf and put more game stuff on it, right? And she was like, wow, that's really nice. So you did. So now we got this big open spot. And then she's like, what do we do with that? I'm like, I have an idea. I'd like to get a display case for my miniatures. And she turned around. It's like, well, why don't we just get a China hutch put in there? So we got a China hutch. And then the next thing is like, you know, that China hutch would be really nice to put all your alcohol in.
I've seen it.
Yes. So the entire China hutch is now nothing but scotch and bourbon.
Well, you know what I wanted to do, there's a particular IKEA case, and it's not the one that you guys see right there. Like, this is the one that a lot of people have. Like, and I have like 3 of them. I have 2 in here and 1 in the hallway down towards my old guest room there. But I wanted to get, they make this one from IKEA that's like much wider and much more classy, like to be like in a common area kind of looking. And I had said to my wife, I said, I want to get one of those, and I'm going to trick it out like with some LEDs and stuff, and I want to put like all my French Indian War stuff so I can put an army on each shelf. Like, this is just really little snippets of stuff. It's not actually like an army, you know. And and I said I'd like to put I want to protect it from dust. I want to put like the stuff that you guys use, that they use, not you guys, but like they use in Windows to actually you tape it against something, and it has all like the brush, so it prevents dust from coming in. Like, do you know what that is? So I want to actually put that in LED lighting in, so I can actually have like my French on one shelf and my British on another shelf, like maybe some Native Americans on another shelf, just some other stuff, but just in mass of everything I've painted, rather than just in boxes that are like hidden away. But what she said was, like, because I have the hobby room, right? She's like, I do not want to see anything from this outside of your room. She's like,
Over.
I gave you the room. The message is I gave you the room, but I don't want anything outside of the room. Like, you know.
When I was over at Dan Booman's house, he has a really nice display case in his entire Brettonians. All of his miniatures that are painted are all in display, and it's between the kitchen and I think another room.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's right off the kitchen, and it's like you wouldn't notice it, but it's like a little entryway. Like, and I looked at it and I was like, "That's all your miniatures." And he's like, "Oh yeah." It's like then you have to show he's proud. It's like really nice. Does a nice job on all.
Yes.
And I looked at it and was
Yes,
like, wow. And that's what I wanted to have upstairs, to put all my miniatures on display, all the ones I have. And then now it's being taken up by all the alcohol. But
oh, poor Rusty.
Yeah,
It's all your alcohol.
I feel bad for you, Rusty.
It's all of your huge Scotch collection.
Well, it's not that big.
Maybe you could sell off the Scotch to buy more miniatures.
Yeah.
Well, one bottle of Scotch can buy a lot of miniatures. So.
In all fairness, I was surprised at the comment because at my house, and the reason was I wasn't asking to put it upstairs, like in the common areas up there. Like the basement, we have a movie viewing area, like where we sit on the couch, and I have on my wall, I'm really into film, and I collect black and white what they call press photos of movies. And so they're not really expensive. They're just kind of quirky. They just put out this black and white 8x10 that says the name of the movie, and it was an official snapshot of the movie. And so I find press photos of movies that I really like, and I frame them in black and white and I put them on the wall. Kind of like when you go to a restaurant and they have like all of like, you know, like things that people have signed, you know, or whatever. Like I kind of like that on the wall in my movie area. Mm-hmm. And so I already have a bit of I've already kind of decked out the movie space for me in some ways, and we all sit in there and watch the movies. And I thought I would just have this go off of that in that room, and that's when like it was like, no, like you can have the movie stuff, but like all that stuff is staying within your realm.
You no longer amuse me.
Yeah. I actually got lucky when my father-in-law moved. He retired and sold his house up here, and then he moved to Arizona. He had 3, I don't know if you know what they are, but they're called barrister cases.
Mm-hmm. I know exactly what they are because I've been looking into them. Yep, keep going.
So he gave us 3 of them.
Yep.
And my wife took one of them, which is in her sewing room, and you know, she's filled it with her stuff, you know. But I have 2 of them, which are in the dining room, which I've been gaming in lately. And I ended up, because they're so tall to fill, you know, lawyers' books, right? I ended up building extra shelves for each one, and each shelf has miniatures on them. Mm-hmm. Then I bought some LED lights and I put those in there, you know, and things like that. So they're on, my miniatures are actually on display.
They're very visual barrister cases. Like there's that border of wood, but you can see right in.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And in that, the idea about displaying them actually came from a friend of ours who said, you know, his stuff should be out so everybody can see it. And we were like, okay, well, great, but how? You know, and then suddenly we had these 3 barrister cases drop on our lap. So, you know, those things are down there. And the other reason why I wanted to kind of get stuff down there is I wanted to gain more. If you see over here, I have this bookcase over here. So I've been trying to consolidate all of my painting reference material into this, but this is what was holding all of my miniatures for the longest time. Mm-hmm. So it was nice to be able to get that out of there, and I gained more space here.
So can I clarify one thing, just so I remember this correctly? But this was an individual on your wife's side of the family that you inherited it from?
Yeah.
And so what I'm hearing actually, and that is that you're actually taking something that could be considered slightly nostalgic from your wife's side of the family and actually saying, yes, let's use this. I agree that we should use this from uncle or whoever so-and-so. And because you see, that's another aspect of this is that, like, even with my wife, anytime something's offered and like it results in a transaction and appreciation and a gift and thank you, and like, you know, we take this and it's something from the family, like the fact that you're using it for something you want to do is one aspect, but the other aspect is you're accepting and using something that actually is from your wife's side of the family, which is another positive. Correct?
Yes.
Because like my father-in-law is really into woodworking, and if I said, like, you know, like anything that I would take from my in-laws, you know, in order to use in a real way that would be useful, but also taking that on and like keeping it within, like, that would be considered positive. And so where that can happen, it's another, that is a good technique. But actually, that though, do they still make barrister cases, or can you still buy them?
I would guess so. I haven't actually looked.
Yeah.
I would think that if you're going to attempt to buy them new, they're probably expensive.
Yeah.
The one thing that I have gone to go look at is used office furniture places. I'm sure you guys probably have them around there, but here in Portland, we have this huge warehouse that's nothing but used furniture. And it's a great place to go because, you know, for, you know, $20, $30, $50 or something like that, you can come out with a nice, you know, roll top desk.
Yeah.
You know, because they got it from someplace and they're just trying to move it, you know. So I've been looking at places like that to add to what I already have.
Right.
So that's been a good thing. I haven't actually tried to look for something new because I always figured they'd probably be really expensive.
But the other thing though is
money.
The world has changed in ways that those of us that have been around when we used to have encyclopedia collections, the world has changed. I mean, even professionals that you would think like somebody would, if there's like somebody in an office these days, like in the future, when somebody's in a room, if there's a barrister with books all over the place, they're all going to be made of plastic for visual purposes, you know. Right. But like the reality is you get everything online, right? Like, and even in like, you know, many professions these days, I wonder how many people still use books. And so that's kind of why I wondered.
All right, I just looked up vintage barrister oak bookcases around $500.
They can be expensive. There's some you can look on
some
Facebook
of them are up to $1,000, $1,500.
Look on Facebook Marketplace and see how many come up in your area, and you'll see them for cheaper.
Yeah.
Than that. Like used places, like Victor's saying, like places that are not trying to get you to buy a new one, or maybe. If something's really restored, like antiques can become really expensive no matter what they are, you know.
Yeah.
But they're nice looking, and they're a really nice solution for miniature. I was looking into them too, like I said, for miniature display, for sure.
Like I have a cabinet that's kind of like yours, Palmer, the glass one that's behind you, but it's all glass, but I think it was from IKEA, you know. Has wood sides and a wood top and all that kind of stuff, and it has glass shelves. All my busts and larger scale figures are in that.
Yep.
You know, and now I've painted so many, I actually have to go get another one because I filled it, you know. They
make one that's another one from IKEA. It starts with an M, but it's basically longer. Width-wise, like not as much deep, and I think it holds more as far as if you're looking to display an army. Now, I know for yourself, you do a lot of character pieces. Like I don't know how many. I know you do armies too, but I'm not sure what your needs are as far as what you want to display. But
right now, just something to put everything in.
Something to get it off my desk.
Yes.
Yeah. Maybe we just go to the comments real quick. David at XNX says, my hobby space is also the guest room, so it's pretty dedicated at the moment. Brad says, having a dedicated hobby space for painting and hobbying is great. Ed says, I get more painting done with a little painting place in my living room. Don't have to be such a hermit as when I do it all in the dedicated hobby space. And I can see that because there are times, I don't know if everybody feels guilty, I just say this, but there are times when I've painted, and particularly a Saturday, like where it's not after work and people are, like the busy days of the work week, I find less of an issue to go down and capture a moment when everybody's busy to paint. It's when it's a family day more, you know, and I'm not sure what everybody's doing. Half of what I do on the weekends is figure out what everybody else is doing. You know, I'm always like looking around, like what is everybody doing today, and like what are we doing today. But if I take some time gaming or hobbying on a Saturday, I feel a little more guilty if I go into the hobby room and I don't know what everybody else is up to, whether people are expecting me to be involved with stuff. But if you're there and you're right with everybody else doing stuff, I think it makes it easier. Painting on a TV tray by the computer right now.
Done that a lot.
Yeah.
I actually, go ahead.
No, you go.
I actually just bought, because I was actually thinking about what you were talking about being separate, and I haven't received it yet, but Sarissa Productions actually makes like a little hobby tray, I guess.
Oh.
And I'm waiting for it to show up from England so I can try it. But essentially what I want to do is just whatever I may be working on at that particular moment, I can take it downstairs. And our kitchen table is right next to our family room, which has our TV in it. And that's where my wife sits usually to crochet. So I can actually sit at the kitchen table, talk to her, and I watch a movie together or something, right? And I can get a little bit of something done without having to take everything downstairs.
And it's funny because I've done that too. Like, and I'm going to show it here in a second. I'm gonna go grab it and show it to you guys, because not only this thing right here is my hobby tray, and I've made it from in my garage, and it's my ultimate version of cheapness in the sense that even though I can afford and do a hobby tray, and even though it doesn't have all like the bells and the whistles, like I just decided to just slap some wood together and make my own, because I'd rather, at the time, it was years ago, I'd rather, like, sometimes I can't spend money on anything but miniatures. So if I have like a certain amount of hobby money, it's like, how many miniatures is that worth? And so I ended up
know exactly what you're saying.
Now I'm actually reverse. I'm actually like, I bought, after I saw Vic's video on his light, I went out and bought a light just like his, even though I could spend a whole army, you know, I could get a whole army, like, you know, or whatever for the setup with everything. I valued the quality time, the quality of the purchase of being able to paint whatever miniatures I have already, you know what I mean, better, you know, and have better vision and all this stuff than just getting another army to paint. But I think it's the reverse. Once you have your dedicated hobby space and now you're like spending a lot of time away, you start finding ways to now actually not like paint also in other places, which is kind of funny.
Yeah.
I sort of spent the last year when it's like I really wasn't buying a lot of miniatures last year. So I started buying frames and framing all these prints and stuff I had. So actually putting stuff on the walls now instead of
right.
actually making it look like it's a livable looking space instead of just bare walls or haphazard. I actually organized it so that the hobby space now looks like it's part of the living room.
Brad says, I spend most of my time in my painting room, but it's nice to have a dedicated hobby space. Well, it's miniatures or scotch. I think he's referring to
my case.
Your case, yeah. My painting just came with my mother-in-law. She's great. My first question is, are you only watching the show or are you watching with your wife? I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. My mother-in-law is great too, and I'm watching the show. Like, I'm alone here, so I get along very well with my in-laws.
Well, the desk I have right here is from my mother-in-law. It's a Han desk. Actually, two desks. I got a Han desk over here and a Han desk over here. My father-in-law worked for Han. He was the secretary of the board, so he had all this was part of his office, and that was part of his office. So he had, it's like when she downsized to she moved over here to Des Moines. It's like, well, I'm just going to either throw that stuff out. It's like I'll take it.
Is that a furniture company that's local to your area?
Yeah, they make office furniture.
Okay.
They internationally
Mhm.
they're well known.
Cool.
It's like this is a metal desk and the other one's a wood desk.
Well, and my desk is another example of cheaping out. Is like I got this desk for free, and it's it's a huge desk, but it's basically was sitting. I'm sure it was in an office in Calgary in the 90s somewhere downtown, and used for many, many years. And some guy brought it home, and he wanted just somebody to get it out of his basement. And so I basically got it for free off of Craigslist. And
same.
Nice.
Well, and the whole thing is this: there's certain things like I'm not going to spend money on a hobby desk in a hobby room. Like, like to be honest, I want something functional, just a surface. And I've already gotten so much paint on this thing, that like I just don't see that as. Maybe I spend money on this chair I'm sitting in, like Rusty. I told Rusty about that because of my posture and with things. And with that, like I felt good about like spending some money, but I'm not gonna. If I can, like I'm gonna get something as cheap as possible. And actually, the chair I had before this that was hurting my back, I got at the same time for free. So I've actually spent some money on it. But
yeah, my son last summer he moved into an apartment. And he's like, well, I'd really like to have something, a desk or something I can put my computer on, because he took his desktop that was sitting over there next to the other one that crapped out on me. And he was like, I'd like to put something on it. I need a desk or something. I was like, well, I'll look on Craigslist. And I looked on Craigslist, and the guy said, come and get it. It's yours. And went over there and looked at it, and it was a Han desk, just like this one.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, we'll take it. And he's like, there's all this other furniture over here, this Han file cabinet and bookshelves and stuff like that. And he's like, if you want, it's like, well, if it can fit in a truck, we'll take it.
Nice.
That was like, he outfitted his apartment with a whole bunch of free stuff that was on Craigslist.
Sounds like my college days.
Yeah.
Well, gentlemen, I think we are at almost at the 2.5 hour mark, which is about a half hour over our normal, typical expected show. And we've had some great comments tonight. We're through all of our comments. We've had some great topics, I should say, and lots of great discussion. I think probably we are coming to a close. I know our guests sign up, and we have like great discussions, and sometimes they go longer, but with Rusty and I, like we're kind of like could just pull the plug because we organize the show, but with the guests they're almost like there's a faux pas that you're trapped until like you're let go. It's
like one of these guys gonna shut up and get off, man.
I'll just hit stop can and mute. See ya.
Oh, sorry, I froze. My camera froze, guys.
Oh,
Can't get back on. Exactly. But
there he is. He's doing the lizard freeze.
There we go. It looks like we're done. Our guest is frozen pretty convincingly. Dwayne says, no hobby room yet. Something myself and the missus have discussed. Wouldn't know it, actually, in a lot of ways. When we do, you look like I told you. For those of you that watch, the show regularly, you've probably seen Dwayne on the show, but on his last show, he looks like he's got Joe Rogan set up. Like I'm looking at him, he's got the microphone here, he's got the brick behind him, he's got all this stuff, and I'm like, looks great, actually. But now he's saying he doesn't have a dedicated hobby room.
Well, that's his bedroom.
Yeah,
he's sitting on his bed.
That's the kitchen. You move over, there's like a gas burner stove. Just kidding. So, in any case, what always makes the show is, besides our colorful regulars, is our guests and our people that join the show live and comment. I find that in particular, the folks that comment really make it fun to be on the show, like with all the comments and things. And so I appreciate everybody coming down, and I appreciate Vic, you joining us. You've been on the show. I don't know if you've been now 2 times, or is this your 3rd time? Or your 2nd?
The 3rd time, I think.
Yeah. I would have thought it's your 3rd, because I don't think you've only been once. Yeah, so we always appreciate when you come down.
I enjoy coming to this. You guys are a lot of fun. And we have great discussions for 2.5 hours. So it's a lot of fun.
Lots of great discussion and a lot of fun is what it's all about.
Yep.
And so, all right. Well,
and a lot of tequila.
That's right. That's right. You made a good dent in that. And I noticed the ice is melted.
Yeah.
It's like I refilled 3 times, I think, equal about what you poured your first time.
See, that's the trick. You just go for it all at once and you don't worry about repouring.
That's right. There you go.
True.
You're realistic. It's good planning.
I have one on that started my second bottle. I since I already had this other bottle of scotch here, I just like, oh god, my third one was the second bottle. So hey,
you can just hook up an IV.
Yeah.
You don't have to worry about anything.
I could do that for you if you want.
That's right.
See, the smart thing is you stash scotch here and there around the house, so when you just don't feel like moving, you just reach over and grab something. There you go.
Where did I see that? I saw that somewhere. I saw that in a movie. I can't think of what it was now.
Dwayne says no mattress, just sleep on the BattleTech boxes that sets. All right. Looks like we got a couple of BattleTech comments here. Well, Brad says, thank you. Thanks for the topics. It was fun. And David says, I like the look of that new Stalker.
It's good stuff.
That must be referring to you there, Rusty.
Unless it's about the Kickstarter. They released some new pictures from the Kickstarter today. I haven't looked at them yet. So.
No, looks like Vic really did freeze this time. He must have to go.
All right.
All right, everybody.
I did that move like 5 minutes ago. It's just catching up now.
So one thing I would just bring up, and I don't know, but Rusty, have we ever had an episode 16 before? I'm just wondering.
I don't think so.
Because we're at episode 15 tonight, and really each season we fluctuate as to how many we get in. But I think we're starting to get to the point where we're getting even more, like in the sense that we're almost at episode 16 before, like we stop during the summers. We literally do like a television sort of thing where we just do like fall and spring. We take a little bit of a break in the holiday and then we stop during the summer.
So if we go into the first weekend of June, which typically when we kind of stop, we might have 20 episodes.
We're going to be higher than we've ever been this year.
Yeah.
Like this is going to be for episode 4, for season 4. So what we normally do, just in preparation for that, is we usually like to bring back as many people as we can fit on StreamYard that can make it for a final episode, for like just sort of a, I won't call it a battle royale, but it's like, just this idea of like
party, big
celebration, you know what I mean, of and a topic that everybody's interested in and fun. And so we'll likely do that for the folks that have been on, and we'll figure out a way to try to get as many people on as, without that are available. I'd hate for somebody not to be able to participate if they wanted to. We'll just see what we can do, because I think it's just the limitations of StreamYard. But
I don't know how many you can put on.
I don't either, really, because I think we had 5 for that last one. So that would be 2 of us and 3 others. But we certainly have had, guest-wise, at least 4 different people this season. So we'll have to figure it out.
Yeah. We'll have to see what
the
limitations are.
But Victor, if you're interested,
sure.
Also, that'd be great. We'll figure it out. We might have
Dwayne said he wants to be in, so
that's true. That's true. We might have to, we'll have to figure it out. The only thing I'm worried about is not being able to get everybody on. We'll just see what we can do, what StreamYard allows and stuff. So, but yeah, that'd be something we're looking forward to, and we'll have a couple episodes before then. I think we're going to be trying to get Curtis for a part 2 of the RPG for next time, because we really did the entire episode as RPG and then still kept going, and we just had other stuff to go over. And so we were going to do another role-playing game kind of episode for the next show on your channel next time, I believe.
Yeah. So we have to get a hold of Curtis and let him know that we.
Yeah.
Good deal.
Curtis.
All right, everybody. Well, thanks again, Victor, and we will.
Thank you, everybody.
See you on your channel, on your updates, and we'll see you again.
Yep.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Soon. Night.
Take care. Enjoy the rest of that.
I will.
Take care.